Shout out to the GMs and the wives, the godly men and the warm, inviting, feminine, empathetic women out there. Now, in today's video, I want to talk about, I want to ask you a question for the viewer watching this. What do you do? And the reason that I want to ask this question is because this is a question that we are asked a lot of times whenever we're networking or whenever we're going to business events or social events or at church or wherever you are, whatever you're doing, whoever you are, you're going to get asked this question eventually. And it seems like sometimes people have a kind of restraint in asking this question right up front because, well, what are you really asking? Like what you're really asking in some sense is, well, like what do you do and how do you spend your time to make money? Like that's really what you're asking. And there's not anything really inherently wrong with that question, but recently, as I've done a lot more networking recently, I've been asked that question and I've been asking that question more. And today I was at the gym and I was introduced to some younger guys, and one of them was my age and one was a bit younger. But at the time when I was introduced, the guy that I had been introduced to, we'd been like acquaintance level. We never really spoke about that kind of thing. But when we were talking to these other guys, they said that they worked for this other guy. And I said, oh, well, what do you guys do? And the look of hesitancy on their face was something that was like, I could tell that this was something that they were kind of iffy about on answering. And I understand that because there was once a time when I freaking hated that question. Like, I really did not like that question. Well, what do you do? Well, what do you do? What do you do? Because I always thought and assumed that someone was trying to just get something from me. And in reality, in retrospect, what I really was not thinking about the question and how it could be answered. I was thinking about, I was thinking about what I was not doing more so than what I was doing. I was thinking more about what I could be doing and what I've actually repressed on my own, and I haven't actually worked to do what I wanted to do. And so instead I have this job. And so sometimes when people ask that question, well, what do you do? A lot of times people will give you your title, or their title rather. They'll give you their work title, or they'll give you whatever. And sometimes people will be, well, it's none of your business. Or they'll say, well, what kind of business do you have to ask me that? And it's true. Like, it's not necessarily your business to ask that kind of question. But at the same time, if you're trying to network, well, if you want to build something with people that are like-minded, you've got to understand. And maybe this person has something of value that they can provide for you, and maybe you have something of value that you can provide for them. And in the Bible, it says that we are supposed to buy and sell from our neighbors, right? This is one of the things that I don't think a lot of people understand about modern day corporations is some of the corporations are so big, and I'm not going to specifically say any names here because I don't want to exclude or include anything that's going to be super. You guys know what I'm talking about. We'll just leave it at that. You guys know which corporations are really big and which have a monopoly on certain areas and industries and which don't. And I think what we need to do as a society is get past this and start creating our own businesses and our own ways of being. So my answer, what I answered this question when I was asked that question back from this guy that I was talking to at the gym this morning, I told him I wasn't giving him a direct answer, but I said enough to try to build rapport. And to try to tell a story as well, like to be engaging and make a human connection that's still in line with my brand and who I am. So I said, well, I've got a few irons in the fire. I've got a day job, I've got a side business, and I've got a few other projects that I'm working on. Pretty simple, straightforward, but I didn't say exactly what I was doing. I didn't say exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing. And, there was still a lot of mystery there, but it was enough to gain rapport and to build a foundation on, okay, well, I'm about my shit. But I'm not going to sit here and just tell you because I don't really know who you are. But in some ways, you are testing like how this person is going to answer the question. And so I am not opposed when people are not wanting to answer the question. Because I totally understand, because again, I was that guy that at one point in time, I didn't want to answer that question. I still really don't like that question, but it's a question that we all have to kind of, we kind of have to just get around to it. Like we have to learn about it sooner or later. And you've got to know, like, if this person is going to be able to, like, are you going to be able to build something with this person or not? And it's not necessarily about using this person for personal gain, but it's also like, well, what kind of skills and everything that do you have that maybe we could mesh together and build something with, or just to get to know you. Like these are the kinds of things that are supposed to go on when you're socializing and when you're networking. Like, this is a very standard question, and I understand how sometimes this is what I want to say though. Now, this is what I want to say. This is now my answer that's going to be from now on. Because I want to be able to, I realize, let's say this, I've realized that I've been approaching this answer to the question wrong. So what I ought to be saying in response to that is exactly what I'm doing that's providing a value. I'm not necessarily talking about myself. I need to be talking about how I can demonstrate value. So it's not necessarily about our accomplishments in this case, even though men absolutely need to lead with their accomplishments when talking with other men, because otherwise, like, look, as a man, if you don't want to work around somebody that's not competent, I don't care who you are. I don't care what you do. If you are just trying to be the best at whatever you're doing, that's enough for me. And if you're just giving it an effort, that's enough for me. Like, I don't care, because my accomplishments really don't matter. And I know my accomplishments really don't mean anything when I'm on my deathbed. Now, I know that I'll give it everything that I've got, but that doesn't necessarily mean that my accomplishments make who I am. Who I am is just what I am and how I operate as a human being. My accomplishments are going to be a side effect of that. Right? So accomplishments really don't mean a whole lot. So this is going to be my answer going forward. I'm going to say, I help people grow closer to God, because that's really what I do. And I can think about this why am I really saying that? What am I really saying when I answer that question now? When I say I'm helping people grow closer to God, well, number one, I'm still putting God as the priority. And that's exactly me as I follow Christ. Someone that follows Christ, I want to put God first. So I'm putting God first, number one. I'm demonstrating value, number two. And number three, I'm understanding what exactly is going on as far as if people want to grow closer to God or they don't. Because it's also a kind of a vetting process as well. If you say to someone, I just thought of this today, like that's like literally this is why I'm making this video, because of this conversation that I had earlier at the gym. If I say to somebody, I help people grow closer to God, you can tell, I'm sure, by their reaction, because I'm going to test this out in the future. But I've already talked about Jesus and everything with other people, and I've already gotten different kinds of responses, but I can estimate and I can gauge on if I say I follow Jesus and I help people grow closer to God. Well, number one, I'm telling a story as well. Or number two or three, I'm telling a story. I'm also providing value. Why is it important for people to grow closer to God? That could be a question that they ask in return. Well, why? Like, what made you want to do that? That's not going to be something that you hear every day. And so again, you need to find out what you're doing. Who are you? What do you do? What kind of value are you really bringing? I also thought about what other things I could say. Like, One of my other goals is to empower people to prosper. That's pretty much my mission statement insofar as my business is concerned on the side, is I want to help empower people to prosper. And another thing that I want to do is revolutionize psychology and spirituality. I want to fuse those things because I think spirituality has become so tainted and misunderstood, and we've lost our ways with God, so much so that even trying to think about God is in many ways, for many people, a struggle of self-identity, and it's a struggle for self-awareness as well. People a lot of times they don't have self-awareness. And as much as socialization is important, it's also important to understand the meaning and the value of solitude. And this is where a lot of people grow closest to God, is in solitude. But they oftentimes don't want to grow closer to God because sometimes when you're alone and you're being revealed certain things, or you're thinking about certain things, you're oftentimes you're thinking about a specific kind of perception and perspective of your life, and you don't really always know how to view it from different directions. And so when you're actually looking at it from different directions, sometimes, and internally, that is, when you're looking at it internally from different directions, you're going to be revealed certain things about yourself that you might not have understood beforehand. And so that's going to be something that is, well, it's going to either help you grow closer to God, or it's going to make you want to continue living in sin. And some of you may understand this already, but on this channel, I do not like the word sin in the religious sense or repentance in the religious sense. This goes back to what I'm saying about revolutionizing psychology and spirituality. Sin and repentance, to me, are psychological. When you are sinning, you are continuing to operate in a way that damages your well-being spiritually, emotionally, and physically, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Repenting from sin, repentance, is fleeing from that which you know to be wrong for your spiritual, emotional, or physical well-being, or resisting temptation to those three categories as well. So this is just a few different kinds of insights on why what you do is very important in the general sense as well, because we often think about this question, what do you do, in the sense of, well, we think about it in the sense of how would you say it? Specifically like business operated, I suppose, and like the practicalities of day-to-day life. We don't always look at it in the spiritual sense. But depending on what people do and how they do it, it's going to tell a lot about how they live their life and why they live the life that they live. And I also want to give a shout out to anybody that's just working. You know, if you feel like, because I've had to do that as well. I remember what it was like going full-time. I was a full-time student and I was a full-time manager at a social work company. And I was pretty much on call 24/7. I remember there was even times in class where like something would happen with our clients. We basically worked with, I won't disclose too much information about the individuals themselves, but we basically worked with adults with mental disabilities. And some of them behaved as if they were 2 or 3 years old. And that was just the reality of the situation. Like that was just who they were. And so we had to have certain kind of behavior protocols that would reinforce or not enforce certain behaviors that we wanted to improve and see. Now, a lot of the people that I worked with specifically in the house that I worked at, we had 3 individuals that I worked with in this house. And, well, there was a rotation, but 3 individuals mainly that I was managing at the time. And I had 7 or 8 staff for my team. And so I would have communication with all of these people. I would be doing all of the scheduling. I would be making sure that everybody's accounted for. I would have to make sure everybody's taking their pills. I would have to order everything as far as the pills and everything like that. Like, everybody's getting their medication. Everybody's taking their medication on at certain times and on time, because some of the medications that we had, like if they didn't get their medication at certain times, within like an hour or so, the behaviors that they already exhibit could be like 10 times worse. I remember there was one time, holy cow, like I've got some stories from that job, guys. But there was one time where literally there was a window shattered because the pizza that was made for this individual, the pizza was a bit too cold or something. I still don't know exactly what the reason was, because the individual, like, he could only like mumble. He could only mumble. So there was a language barrier, and he knew a little bit of sign language, but that was pretty much it. Ultimately, though, yeah, there's a window being completely shattered, and all over some pizza. And so we had to have the police come. We had to have the individual's parents come over. We had to file certain reports and everything. Like, it was a very detailed job. Like, I've seen a lot of stuff in that job, and it was a very stressful time in some sense, because I was already going to school full time. I was already working full time. And on top of that, it was just like intense, like psychological stress being placed on day-to-day life all the time. And I only did that job for like 2 years, but that was still like, that was one of the craziest experiences. And that wasn't even the craziest thing. Like, that wasn't even not even remotely, but that's just an example. And so anybody that's out here just working in general, trying to make their life better, I have so much respect for, because I know what it's like to be broke. I know what it's like to feel like you're not going anywhere in life. I know what it's like to feel like nobody even really sees you or acknowledges you in general. And I know what it's like to be asked that question, what do you do, and not really be happy about your circumstances. And that's exactly why I made the fucking change to change my circumstances so that I can do better. And to heal from my own past so that I can help people grow closer to the Most High God. And with that being said, I hope this message was useful and insightful. And until next time, peace be with you.